Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'd, habati fillah. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As'al Allah kareem Rabbil arshil azim an yatawallana fi dunya wal akhirah. Habati fillah. A question was asked. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How do we distinguish the following terms and states of heart and mind, and how are they related to each other? Hope in Allah, which means raja, reliance upon Allah, tawakkul ala Allah, wa husn al-dhan billah, meaning having like a positive outlook towards Allah. How do we embody and live by them correctly and upholding them also in our Islamic mindset, belief system? Barakallah fiqh. So this is actually a very big question, and we'll just try to give it as much of its right as we can. But first and foremost, knowing and understanding from the ta'rifat raja, this putting this hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that it is one of the definitions that the scholars mention is amal al-abd bi rabbihi wa husn al-dhan bihi fi jalb al-khair wa daf' al-shar ma'a badal al-sabab فهو تمع فيما عند الله من نعيم المقيم بفعل طاعات وترك المعاصي. So one of the definitions for the concept raja, having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is to basically, raja is like having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in your Lord, and also having husn al-dhan. So you are possessing, raja is including husn al-dhan to some of the scholars. It includes that you have it's intrinsic, that you have this good, positive, righteous outlook in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in your Lord. You have a positive outlook about your Lord and a positive understanding of who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is and his tawheed. So husn al-dhan bihi, and protecting you from harm and giving you good, meaning that the only one who can protect you from harm and grant you goodness is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and believing in that. And badala sabab, and it is also striving to attain something and do something good, that you're making an effort. And it is desiring that which is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from his favors and bounties, and doing obedience to him and leaving off sins. So that's a very comprehensive definition for raja, this hope in Allah. So we see that it implies and it includes many things from a scholarly perspective. Tawakkul, habati fillah. Tawakkul is one of the definitions from Ahl al-Ilm, is that it means taslim lillah. It's like you're just putting your comfort, you're accepting totally with true comfort Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa i'timad alayh, and that you're totally relying upon him to the exclusion of anyone or anything else. That is one definition of tawakkul. Another definition, which I've heard our Sheikh Abdul Razak al-Badr mention, which is one of the ta'rifat from the Salaf of this ummah, it is also known as i'timad al-Allah wa fi'la asbab, that you are putting your trust, your heart, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Taslim. So they include one another, these definitions. And you are making an effort to attain whatever is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these two definitions for tawakkul are very inclusive of one another. And as far as between raja and tawakkul, we see that there's a closeness, and we are ordered to do both. Okay, so raja is maybe more that you, because they're inclusive, this is having hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially when it comes to wanting the good that is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and wanting protection from the harm that is out in the world or any kind of harm. So you're having raja. And at the same time, it might even include tawakkul. So when it comes to your ibadah and actually implementing it, sometimes these terms are very inclusive of one another. But raja, also is also in some of the ayat, it has a meaning of khawf, of like a type of fear. So you have hope and fear in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas tawakkul, you are relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to attain something and just putting your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so you can see where they're actually very close. Sometimes they can be very close in meaning. So one of the definitions for husn al-dhann that the scholars explain, and this meaning here is very close to tawakkul, very close to tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is huwa rajal khair min Allah ta'ala mal husn al-amal wa in aqad asbab al-najah. So husn al-dhann billah refers to using the same terminology, raja, this hope. Here, the hope for the khair. It's hoping for good from Allah the Almighty with doing excellent or good deeds and putting forth or adhering to the means for gaining success. So that's very close to tawakkul. And it just goes to show that the terminologies, sometimes they're overlapping and there may be some slight difference, and it's going to depend upon the context. As far as the actual question that the questioner put forward, so how do we embody and live by them correctly, upholding them also in our Islamic mindset and our belief system? So by knowing and understanding those meanings and knowing that they overlap, but it means in general that you are applying this in your life by fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, avoiding the muharramat, and doing the righteous deeds, putting your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, putting your trust in Allah while at the same time making effort to attain and achieve whatever you are trying to achieve, and at the same time having a righteous view about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having a positive outlook that your Lord wants good for you, and that your Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, and that you are striving to be of the muttaqeen, especially if you're striving to do good and be of the righteous salihin. So it's not losing hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's how we combine these concepts, because again, these are concepts, and that's why in trying to define them, sometimes they might overlap, and sometimes the meaning might be the same in certain contexts. So it just means striving, as far as you trying to practice and implement, striving with all of those attributes that we just mentioned of, having a positive outlook and a positive belief about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's your aqidah. And having a positive mindset and remembering that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does want good for you, not despairing, not giving up on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and putting your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you want to achieve and try to attain something by making effort as well. Let's give you an example so that it's a little more concrete. So this means, ahabati fillah, for example, a person who wants to get married, and maybe they've made effort to try to get married. They've talked to their community. They have a profile and websites. They've made efforts, okay? But they're not finding the suitable person or suitable mate and spouse. So putting their trust in Allah is leaving that result, that tawakkul is leaving the result with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that they have made the effort. They did the profile, as long as they didn't do anything muharram. And they have talked to their community leaders or people in their community to get married. And they've, and if it's a man, he's made the effort. He's tried to earn the money to get a mahar to prepare to marry. And if it's a woman, she's just prepared herself through Islamic knowledge to know what the rights of a husband and wife are. So they've made these efforts, these individuals, and then they put their heart, they leave the result with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have made every effort. We would refer to that as tawakkul ala Allah. At the same time, the husn al-dhan in this mas'ala is that they have a positive outlook with regards to Allah. They're putting that trust in Allah, and they believe and think good that, yes, I didn't get married yet, but I believe it's coming soon because it's from Allah, and Allah wants good, and Allah wants us to get married, and Allah wants to keep me from muharramat. So they're thinking about a positive outlook with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're very close to these concepts. And their raja is that they hope, they're hoping for this thing, this marriage, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bless them with a suitable righteous spouse. And at the same time, they fear displeasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by doing disobedience. And so they're putting their trust and their hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.